The market district of Starhub 11 was alive with color, noise, and motion. Hundreds of species moved through the sprawling open-air space, trading goods that ranged from glowing crystals to containers of liquid fire. Humans were still a novelty here. Many species had never seen them up close. But the ones who had always remembered them, small, fragile-looking, but with eyes that never blinked in fear. Aaron was one of those humans. Only 8 years old, he was smaller than most children in the station, but his spirit was bigger than the tallest alien he had ever met. Today, he was carrying a small bag of tools his father had sent for repairs, weaving carefully through the crowded corridors. Behind him, the reptilian officer Shalkora walked briskly, her scales glinting in the artificial sunlight above. Her uniform was polished to perfection, every insignia gleaming. She was feared by many. Stories of her cold enforcement tactics spread across several star systems. No one in Starhub 11 wanted to cross her path. And yet, fate had a way of making even the careful stumble. Aaron, distracted by a small, rolling sphere that bounced down the aisle ahead of him, didn't notice Shalkora striding behind him. He turned suddenly to grab the sphere, his elbow brushing against her arm. The contact was light, barely a touch, but Shalkora's eyes narrowed immediately. "What dare you do?" she hissed in her native tongue, her voice sharp enough to make metal vibrate. Aaron froze. His hands rose instinctively, a gesture of apology. I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, his small voice trembling. Shalkora's tail lashed once. She had spent years enforcing order across hostile worlds, but her patience for the small, soft, unarmed humans had always been minimal. And now, a human child dared to touch her? Without warning, she raised a hand and struck him across the shoulder. The market froze. A murmur ran through the crowd. This was not ordinary. In most systems, striking a human, especially a child, was not punishable immediately. But Starhub 11 had recently begun recording and transmitting everything to the Galactic Council. And humans. Humans did not forget such acts. Aaron fell to the ground, startled, more by the injustice than the pain. His small hands touched the floor, eyes wide as he looked up at the towering alien. Around him, other species looked on, unsure if they should intervene. Reptilians like Shalkora did not answer to anyone here. A soft voice whispered from behind a stall. "She hit the child?" "Yes," another alien replied, eyes wide. "The human, they will not forgive this." And they were right. Back on Earth and its neighboring colonies, the story of humans as Deathworlders was legendary. These were humans who had survived planets where the environment was deadly, the fauna lethal, and the very air a weapon. If a human child was hurt, adults of their kind, seasoned, strategic, and unyielding, would act swiftly. The crowd parted instinctively as Shalkora turned to leave, confident no one would challenge her. She had struck and humiliated a human child. She believed she had enforced her authority. But she underestimated them. By the time the human Marines arrived, only an hour had passed. They did not storm the market in anger. They did not shout. They walked with the calm precision of predators, silent but undeniable. At their head was Commander Varric, a veteran of countless wars on distant Deathworlds. His armor was not flashy, but it was practical. His presence alone commanded respect. He knelt beside Aaron, examining him carefully. "Are you hurt?" he asked, softly. Aaron shook his head. It's okay. She hit me," he said, pointing toward the exit where Shalkora had gone. Commander Varric's eyes narrowed. He did not speak aloud. His team split up, quietly gathering every piece of information. Footage from nearby cameras was requested. Every trader, every alien in the area, was asked for statements. All of this was done without a single shout, without a single show of force. This was humanity's way. Calm, precise, unstoppable. Meanwhile, Officer Shalkora returned to her quarters in her luxury apartment above the station. She laughed to herself, confident she had avoided any real consequence. "Humans are soft," she hissed. "Weak. They will do nothing. This child is nothing to them." But she did not know that this was exactly the kind of insult humans could not ignore. The Galactic Council's laws were clear. A child harmed unjustly was a mark on the species of the perpetrator, and humanity had a way of marking consequences swiftly and forever. In the quiet of the council chambers, humans prepared. Ambassador Hale, tall and calm, reviewed the evidence personally. His eyes did not blink. "This is not a request," he said to his aides. "The council will act, or we will. We do not need anger to enforce justice. Only precision." Quote, and precision was humanity's greatest weapon. The next morning, Starhub 11 buzzed with rumors. Some aliens whispered about what humans might do. Others laughed nervously, saying it was probably just a warning. But everyone knew one thing. Humans did not forgive mistakes lightly, especially ones made against their young. Security footage was reviewed over and over. Shalkora struck the child. That simple act had already set the galaxy into motion. At the Galactic Council, members began to murmur. Most had never seen humans act so calmly, yet so effectively. Deathworlders had arrived. Not in anger, not in spectacle, but in inevitability. Ambassador Hale arrived, silent and dignified. He did not shout. He did not demand. He presented the footage, then stepped back. The room went quiet. Every alien knew they were being watched not just by the humans in the room, but by countless others across the galaxy. A council member from the aquatic world of Nymora whispered, "Do they plan to strike?" Hale's voice, soft and clear, answered without raising volume. "No. We plan to do what the law allows, and if you fail to act, so will we." The room trembled not with fear, but with realization. Humans obeyed law first, but if law failed, humans acted. And those acts were legendary. Meanwhile, Shalkora paced her quarters. Rumors of human arrival had reached her, but she laughed them off. "They will do nothing," she thought. "They are small, weak, soft." She did not notice the human marine quietly observing the security feeds from the hidden terminal she had overlooked. They watched, not with rage, but with patience. Every detail recorded, every movement logged. By the end of the day, it was clear. The humans were not leaving without action, but action would come in their way, not hers. They would not scream. They would not shout. They would prepare, patiently, carefully, and inevitably, and the galaxy would remember. As the sun set over Starhub 11, Aaron sat quietly in a small human shelter. He had eaten little, played less, but he was safe. Commander Varric stood outside, scanning the horizon. He did not smile. He did not relax. He only nodded once. To himself. A single thought ran through his mind. Humans never forget. And when humans do not forget, the universe watches and learns. By nightfall, the story had already begun spreading to other sectors. Traders spoke in hushed tones. A human child was struck, and humanity will act. Across several worlds, parents began holding their children a little closer. Not out of fear of humans, but out of understanding. Humans had rules. Humans had limits. But the limits were vast. And their patience, infinite. Aaron slept peacefully, unaware that his small encounter would ripple through the galaxy. But those who had witnessed the strike, Officer Shalkora, the Council, every alien in Starhub 11, would not sleep so easily. For the humans were coming. Calm, lawful, precise, And nothing, not rank, not fear, not authority, could stop them when their young were wronged. The Galactic Council chamber was unlike any other place in the galaxy. Towers of glass and metal rose high above the observers' seats. Holographic banners of every known species hung from the ceiling, glowing faintly with their native colors. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in tense silence. And today, every eye was on the humans. Ambassador Hale entered last, calm as ever, flanked by a small contingent of human marines. Many had only heard stories about humans, Deathworlders, they called them. Survivors of planets so harsh even the strongest aliens would struggle. But hearing the stories and standing in the same room with them were two very different experiences. Hale did not look around. He did not wave. He simply moved to the center of the chamber, where the Council's main console hovered. Without emotion, he activated the security footage from Star Hub 11. The video played on the massive holoscreens above the chamber. Every counselor could see it. Officer Shalkora, a reptilian enforcer, striking a small human child. The room erupted with murmurs. Many aliens whispered excuses. It is only a child. It was accidental. The human will survive. Hale raised a hand. The room went quiet instantly. Humans had a way of demanding attention without shouting. Their presence alone was commanding. Accident? Hale's voice was calm, soft, yet it carried weight that made the counselors straighten in their seats. The child was defenseless. The child did no harm. This was not accident. This was action. He paused, letting the words sink in. And in this galaxy, action has consequences. Several council members shifted nervously. None wanted to speak against the humans. They had heard of the calm, precise efficiency of Deathworlders. Their legends were not for drama. They were warnings. From the other side, Officer Shalkora rose. Her tail flicked behind her in irritation. "This is nonsense," she spat. "You dare bring your primitive human customs into the council? I am a trained officer. I maintain order. That child. Hale did not flinch. He did not even blink. That child is protected under the Galactic Code, Officer Shalkora. Any species harming a defenseless child risks sanction under Article 112, Section 7. You are accused of violating this law." The council murmured. Many species began looking at Shalkora with suspicion for the first time. Even her own allies shifted in unease. They had relied on her reputation, but now, faced with humans, reputation alone was no shield. Section 7 is vague, Shalkora hissed. It allows for discretion. A minor, an accident. Hale raised his hand again. Calm, precise. Discretion does not apply to harm against the innocent. The law is clear. The Council has 3 cycles to act. If it fails, the victim's species may enact justice themselves. A cold silence fell across the room. No one spoke, not even the officer. The Council tried to regain control. Perhaps a delay, suggested the envoy from Zythera, a species with 6 eyes and 3 mouths. We must investigate further. Smarked. Level Tino. Hale's eyes did not leave Shalkora. You have already been investigated. Evidence is clear. The question is not if you are guilty. The question is if the Council dares enforce justice, or if it will allow lawlessness to prevail. Another murmur ran through the chamber. Every species knew the consequences. Humans were not the first to enforce justice when law failed, but they were always the most efficient. Calm, organized, and unstoppable. Shalkora's lips curled in contempt. Do you threaten me? She asked, her voice harsh. Hale shook his head. No threat. Fact. Law. The difference is important. We follow rules, officer. But when rules fail, we do not hesitate. The council hesitated. Many wanted to side with Shalkora. She was an enforcer, after all. But the humans were unyielding. And in that calmness, they sensed something more terrifying than anger. Inevitability. The session continued for hours. Other species debated whether to punish the officer, offer fines, or demand her resignation. Most tried to find a way to avoid confronting the humans directly. But all eyes kept returning to Hale. Standing tall, silent, unbending. In the corner, human Marines watched everything, noting every movement. They were silent, but their presence was a warning. If diplomacy failed, they were the execution of inevitability itself. Later, the council chamber reconvened. The delay had angered some. Shalkora was smug. She believed the humans would back down, that their reputation was nothing more than legend. But the humans were patient. Hale did not raise his voice. He did not shout. He presented their proposal. Simply, justice must be served. Either the Council enforces the Galactic Code against Officer Shalkora, or humanity will exercise its right under Section 7. We will act, and our action will be final. The Council froze. They had heard the warnings before, but never in person. Never with such calm certainty. Shalkora laughed. You dare threaten the Council? A human child species? Threatening reptilian authority? Hale's voice remained calm. No threat. Just fact. You struck a child. We have given the Council time. It has failed to act. What happens next is within our rights. The room shifted uncomfortably. Some envoys whispered to each other. Deathworlders, humans from hostile planets, were known for calculating patience. But when they acted, the galaxy remembered. Shalkora's own guards began to fidget. They were trained for battle, but none had faced humans in a council chamber. None wanted to see what they could do. Outside, in the waiting area, Commander Varek met with a few key allies. His tone was calm, but sharp. The Council has until the next cycle, he said. If it refuses justice, we act. And when we act, the galaxy will know why humans are feared, respected, and obeyed. The allies nodded. Do you think they will resist? One asked. Varek's eyes narrowed. They can try, but they will fail. Humans are patient, prepared, and precise. They always deliver. Back in the council chamber, Shalkora's arrogance was beginning to falter. She noticed the whispers among her fellow counselors. They no longer looked to her with awe, they looked to her with doubt. The human's calm efficiency had already begun to erode her authority. Hale stepped forward. Officer Shalkora, he said, your actions were recorded. Your denial does not change the truth. You have been given the opportunity to apologize, resign, or face consequences under the law. For the first time, a flicker of fear appeared in the officer's eyes. Not anger, not defiance. Fear, because she realized the humans were not bluffing. The council voted. Again, and again, and again. Each vote was delayed, argued, reversed. Some envoys whispered of compromise, some of fines, some of exile. But none dared enforce immediate action against the officer. Hale nodded once, almost imperceptibly, to the Marines behind him. They did not move. They did not breathe loudly. But in their silence, they carried the weight of an entire species. Outside, across multiple star systems, word of the Council's hesitation reached traders, messengers, and spies. Humans were patient. They would give the Council time. But patience, like ice, could only hold so long before it became inevitable. By the third cycle, tension in the chamber was unbearable. Shalkora's confidence had cracked. Counselors whispered nervously, wondering if the humans would finally act. Hale remained calm. His presence alone demanded attention. Finally, the officer spoke. I did not mean. Hale raised his hand, signaling silence. Intent is irrelevant. Consequence is reality. The child was harmed. The law is clear. The council may enforce it, or humanity will. Choose wisely. The chamber went quiet. Every envoy stared at each other, realizing the truth. Humans do not act out of emotion, but they do act. And when the law allowed, they would deliver justice without error, without hesitation. Shalkora's own allies began to avoid her gaze. They feared that if humans acted, she would not survive politically or legally. Her reputation, her influence, her power vanished before their eyes. All because of her arrogance and one small human child. The council chamber was tense. Silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of the holographic displays. Weeks had passed since the incident at Star Hub 11. Officer Shalkora had been left in place, her authority technically intact. But her reputation was shattered. Every counselor in the room now whispered the same fear. What would the humans do next? Humans were patient, but their patience was not infinite. Ambassador Hale entered the chamber, flanked by his Marines, moving with calm authority. The chamber seemed smaller the moment he stepped in. All alien eyes, from the tallest Zygoran to the smallest insectoid delegate, followed his every move. Hale did not shout. He did not gesture wildly. His calm was the kind that commanded attention without effort. "Counselors," he began, voice steady, "we have waited. The law has been clear. Article 112, Section 7. The protection of the young has been ignored. Officer Shalkora struck a human child. The council was given time to act. The council failed. Therefore, humanity will act." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Many envoys were pale. Some quietly tried to leave. A few whispered prayers to gods they had never prayed to before. The humans were not threatening with anger, they were delivering fact, and facts were deadly when backed by the Deathworlders. Shalkora rose, her scales bristling. Hale held up his hand. Silence swept over the chamber like a cold wind. "This is not anger. This is law. You were given a chance. You were given warning. Justice has a schedule. You missed it." Shalkora's voice trembled for the first time. I never thought. "Intent is irrelevant," Hale said calmly. "The law is what matters. And the law has been observed." The Marines carried a small sealed cube forward. It was unremarkable, metallic, smooth, simple, but every alien in the chamber sensed the gravity of its presence. It was not a weapon. It was a symbol. Hale stepped forward. "This cube represents the consequences of ignoring justice. Open it." The chamber held its collective breath. Some species leaned forward, some shrank back. But no one dared interrupt. Hale pressed a small button. The top of the cube slowly opened. Inside was not what any alien expected. It was a clean, broken council badge of Officer Shalkora, snapped in half. No blood, no gore, only a clear, final message. Her authority was over. She had been removed from power. Her station, her rank, her control, all nullified. The council gasped. Shalkora froze, unable to move. She realized, finally, that her arrogance had been her undoing. She had believed she could act without consequence. She had believed humans were small, soft, and weak. She had been wrong. Hale's voice filled the chamber once more. "Do not harm our children. This is our first and final reminder. The law is not optional. It is not flexible. And those who ignore it will find that humanity observes, waits, and acts precisely." The words were calm, but they carried more weight than any fleet of warships. Every species present understood what they implied. Humans did not need armies in every system. They did not need to rage and scream. They only needed presence, patience, and law. Outside the chamber, news spread faster than any hyperwave message ever could. Traders, diplomats, and messengers carried the story from system to system. The message was simple: do not harm a human child. Humanity will act. Across multiple worlds, governments and councils convened emergency meetings. Many species had underestimated humans. They had assumed Earth was primitive, soft, and weak. Humans were fragile in appearance, but unstoppable in action. Lawful in approach, patient in timing, and absolute in enforcement. A child of theirs could not be harmed without the galaxy paying attention. Even in distant, lawless systems, pirates and mercenaries whispered the same warnings to each other. If you touch a human child, do not expect mercy. Back in the council chamber, Hale and his Marines did not celebrate. They did not gloat. Their presence alone had spoken volumes. They had delivered justice without spectacle, without anger, without excess. That was what made humanity so frightening and so respected. Shalcora, once confident and feared, now sat in silence. Her scales no longer gleamed. Her uniform looked heavy on her body. She had underestimated humans, and the galaxy would now remember her failure. Hale turned to leave, signaling the Marines to follow. His parting words echoed through the chamber. Justice is not about power. It is about law, fairness, and patience. Remember this. And remember that humanity will act if law fails. The chamber was silent after they left. Every counselor knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. Not a war, not a threat, not violence, but pure, precise enforcement of justice by a species the galaxy had underestimated for too long. Weeks later, Star Hub 11 was calm again. Markets bustled, children played, and life went on. Aaron, the boy who had been struck, walked the corridors once more, carrying his small bag of tools. He did not know the role he had played in shaping galactic history. He only knew he was safe, that his parents were proud, and that humans had acted to protect him. Commander Varric watched quietly from a nearby observation post. Patience. Preparation. Precision, he murmured. That is why we survive, and why the galaxy respects humanity. Never strike a child. Never underestimate the small ones. They will endure, and they will act. The Marines stood silently behind him. They needed no words. They had delivered the message. They had shown why humans were called Deathworlders, and that message would echo across the stars for generations. In distant systems, species reconsidered their policies. Children of humans were now untouchable. Parents across the galaxy held their human neighbors' children in awe and respect. Stories of Star Hub 11 spread as cautionary tales. Not a threat, not a boast, but a clear lesson in human resilience and precise justice. Across the council chambers and trade hubs, leaders whispered the same sentence to themselves and each other. Never harm a human child. They will act, and they will be unstoppable. Even Officer Shalcora, removed from authority, remembered the lesson. Her arrogance, her cruelty, her underestimation of humans, it all had consequences, and she would never forget. Months later, humans returned to their colonies and their worlds. Life continued, as it always did. But the galaxy had changed. A line had been drawn. Children of humans were untouchable. Humans acted not with rage but with law and patience. And the galaxy now knew that when humans acted, it was precise, unstoppable, and remembered forever. Aaron grew up knowing that humans were capable of great patience, great courage, and great protection for their young. He learned that sometimes the smallest action, a child being hit, a wrong committed, could ripple across the stars and shape destinies. The galaxy had learned the same lesson, and that lesson was simple. Never underestimate humanity.